can share with you and we can give you more specifics, but we did a breakdown because we've been using more general terms for math as far as a $10,000 per student, which it's really not that for some of the ease of the math. So we just sat down and started, I think one of the things when people have say, well, you know, you don't have hard facts, you don't know what you're talking about, you don't have the real numbers. We have the real numbers, and what you're going to see is for every student it's different, but Kristen's going to share with you a little bit about what that actual number looks like per student, so I'm going to ask her to do that.
So when walking through, and you know, I've had all of you at some point or another, either on budget committees or sitting in my school finance 101 conversations, and quite honestly, pretty much any time I'm at the podium, it's very challenging to talk school finance and make it relatable to people who aren't entrenched in it like I am. For example, our levy alone, 23% of our revenue is a 37-page document of formulas. So I thought, you know, maybe it's best to try to break it down in a way that others are approaching it as far as straight line math. Let's just do straight line math. And I thought maybe that would be a more effective approach to have people understand what I'm trying to say. So just in straight line math, and I've said before, and I rounded up when this conversation started, we were always around 9,000-ish for a kid, but we used 10 because it was easy math. But what I want to acknowledge is that's not that $9,000 or $10,000 or whatever we're using isn't based off of head count. It's based off of a formula. And that formula includes the number of days the kids are actually in school, the number of days we have school. It's very convoluted. And so what I did was and it's available for anybody out on the Department of Education website, they can see where the number comes from, to take it by a per pupil unit. Because the pupil unit actually is more reflective of kind of the kids that are in the seats. It's, if you look and you say Afton has 505 kids, it's closer to that reflection. And when you take that pupil unit number, it's going to say that a kid generates $8,175. All weightings excluded because kids at secondary get different money than kids at the elementary. It's just straight line math. 8,175. And then take out the pieces of that 8,175 that if that student didn't come to our district, we wouldn't have the services there. So that would be a reduction, kind of, you know, the money goes with the teachers, and it's not just a classroom teacher. So if we were to look and I were to say, okay, I'm going to take money away for gifted and talented. Each kid generates $13 for gifted and talented, and we're just going to assume the average kid is not, that comes off the $13 off the 8,175. We're also going to say they don't generate free and reduced, because again, every kid on a per pupil gets free and reduced. We're going to say they don't generate capital because we're not buying textbooks and we're not going to buy a desk and we're not going to do standardized tests. EL, we get dollars, and as you work through the formulas of the things that wouldn't happen if that child weren't here, all the additional servicers or dollars spent, that brings the formula down to approximately $7,810. But now we're not going to bus the kids because we don't need to run a bus. And our transportation cost per kid per year runs us $446. So let's take that away. Now we're down to $7,362. But they get staff development set aside. We're not going to develop a teacher because the teacher won't be in the class, and that's worth $117. So now we're down to $7,246, or $45. Okay, so that's what the kid is generating. That would be kind of taking the nuances out of it and just using the straight line math. And then saying, okay, we know this. We know that when Snail Lake closed in Mounds View, and Snail Lake, in my understanding, is very representative of the schools that we're proposing to close. They're a high-achieving, they were a high-achieving elementary school. Mounds View retention from Snail Lake was 93%. So I'm going to assume we're going to lose 7% of our kids. And this is based off of The most comparable district that exists for us as far as their elementary school. And oh, by the way, it's based off of 14, 15 student population, as are these formulas, because that was the audited expense number that I used. 7% of our kids is, believe it or not, between Marine, Withrow, and Oak Park Heights. And this is K-6, so even giving the benefit of the doubt that there's another grade level in there, it's 50 kids. Exactly 50 kids. Well, we've heard in the straight line math that 50 kids is 2 classroom teachers. Well, I will say this, when you take the formula of $7,245 and multiply it times 50 kids, we do have a lost revenue of $362,291. We absolutely do. But now we have 2 less teachers. And those 2 less teachers equal $200,000, which means we now have lost revenue of $162,291. But then we have specialists that Kathy talked about before that cover preps. And that specialist time equals about $32,000. Our lost revenue now is $130,291. Doesn't include para time or random nuances. So when we talk 50 kids, and what does that do to $1.26 million in savings? And it doesn't address the custodian that drives up there and delivers mail and food. It doesn't take any of that into account. What is our exposure? $130,000. That's the straight line math.